The so-called Liberation Day tariffs, as coined by US President Donald Trump, have served to upend global trade relations, with countries having had to renegotiate bilateral trade agreements with the US administration. South Africa got whacked with a 30% tariff, which would mean US importers of certain South African goods would have to pay that 30% fee to get the product off the ship, which has resulted in these increments being passed on to US consumers. So here's a reminder of what the Supreme Court had to consider.
These tariffs were challenged in two separate cases by small businesses and US states, and the lower court had already ruled in the applicant's favor. The Trump administration argued that they needed these EPA tariffs to address foreign threats, such as drug trafficking and large trade deficits. The US Supreme Court disagreed. The majority essentially stated that the president had very wide powers to regulate the economy, but tariffs was not one of them. And if Congress wanted the president to issue tariffs, they would say so clearly. There was a dissenting opinion that was issued by Brett Kavanaugh, in which, of course, he disagreed with the majority, but he stated that nonetheless there would be other US statutes that allowed presidents to impose tariffs.
It's clear that the latest developments around the US Supreme Court's decision on Trump's tariffs are fluid, to say the least. This is because the president made it clear that he will continue with his tariff agenda, even if it means having to use different legal means or instruments.
This decision affirms all those things that some people weren't sure about. In order to protect, and it says so, in order to protect our country, a president can actually charge more tariffs than I was charging in the past period of a year under the various tariff authorities. So we can use other of the statutes, other of the tariff authorities, which have also been confirmed and are fully allowed. Therefore, effective immediately, all national security tariffs under Section 232 and existing Section 301 tariffs, they're existing, they're there, remain in place, fully in place, and in full force and effect. Today, I will sign an order to impose a 10% global tariff under Section 122, over and above our normal tariffs already being charged. And we're also initiating several Section 301 and other investigations to protect our country from unfair trading practices of other countries and companies.
But in the interim, while trade legalities are up in the air, there's some cautious excitement for exporters to the United States and naturally US importers who've been paying a higher price to bring product onto US shores.
This is actually something that a lot of countries will be pleased about, especially if it goes to be what the court is saying. Because remember, President Trump is not going to take this line down. It's not going to be simple. But given that there's been so much impact about all this, not only for South Africa or the agricultural sector in South Africa, but across the world, it's somehow now kind of ruffles up some feathers, and hopefully, if it does, continue to be the free trade that we've been having, particularly in relations to AGOA, that will have some serious positive impact for South Africa, given the fact that for now, the products that for South Africa are currently, facing these tariffs are the majority of what we are selling, even though there are a few that are being exempted from that.
The Supreme Court decision was announced following the local market close, but interestingly, US markets, which were still on the go, ended in positive territory. But there may be negative impacts for the US dollar as a result.
On the back of this, we saw equity markets rebounding on the back of some relief when it comes to those trading partners. But also we saw US bonds actually declining, because the tariff revenues will then need to be reversed, which can then put pressure on the government fiscus. It's still unclear the extent to which these tariffs will need to be reversed. It will need to be dealt with on a country-by-country basis, given the various sectors. But nevertheless, the rejection by the Supreme Court is a major milestone.
Agriculture Minister John Steenhuisen welcomed the latest Supreme Court decision, but recognises that nothing at this point is set in stone.
We welcome the fact that it's been struck down, but obviously we remain cautiously optimistic. But I think President Trump's already signalled that he's now going to look for other mechanisms to impose tariffs. So we're not out of the woods yet. The best thing that we can do is try and keep the negotiations going to negotiate a good deal for South Africa in terms that we have great products. The American market has a big desire for our products, and we can land in there cheaply. And of course, we've got the best quality in the world on our agriculture.
A massive discussion is underway around what happens to the billions of dollars in revenue received by the US administration as a result of the reciprocal tariffs imposed so far. And while the Supreme Court did not make mention of the way forward for that process, one of its justices simply said that dealing with that aspect would likely be a mess. Nampumelo Siziba, SABC News, Johannesburg.